We are live. Howdy, everyone. Aaron Boster here, and thank you for learning about MS with me. Today is another day in March, and that means that we are still in MS Awareness Month. And it's my goal through my channel here on YouTube to help energize, to help educate, and help empower people impacted by multiple sclerosis. And so I've committed to jumping online to do live streams throughout the entire month of March to help you guys come together as a global community to raise the level of awareness and teach you how to up your game and how to be the most awesome version of you despite having MS. So I'm going to type a quick note into the box here. For those of you that are joining me here live, as you log on, please include where you're coming from. I love to hear where you're calling in from. It's super exciting for me to see this global growing online community. Also, later in the live stream, I'm going to be answering your questions live. So as you write your questions in, please keep in mind that I can't diagnose you with information over the interwebs. I can't treat you with information over the interwebs. And so we have to make the questions generalized. I've got 50 people that have jumped online. I am loving that. That's amazing. And I want to give a shout out to Divine Misery. I did a live stream yesterday and I was really struggling to control the chat so I could read the questions. And she taught me a really cool thing. Scroll up and it stops so I can read the questions. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. I'm going to try to do a better job today. I've got a bunch of people that have jumped online. Just to give a few shout outs. Tracy from Illinois. Hey, how are you? I've got Divine Misery. Thank you again, Divine. I really do appreciate your suggestion. El Holly is online. I've got Jeremy from SoCal. Great to see you. Brenda Potter. Hello from Tennessee. I've got Crystal online from Hampton, Virginia. This is fantastic. I've got Boss Zena from London, UK. There's a bunch of you jumping online. We're up to 53. And I wanted to talk to you today about being 4 for 4 in your fight against MS. I want people with MS to be 4 for 4 in their fight. And I want to go over with you what that means. Now, yes, I've done videos on my channel about this. And so if you want to hear this information again, you most certainly can look up being 4 for 4 in your fight against MS. But let's dive in and talk a little bit about it now. Being 4 for 4 in your fight against MS includes number 1, not smoking tobacco. Smoking cigarettes increases the risk to develop multiple sclerosis. And if you have multiple sclerosis, smoking cigarettes speeds up your disability. So smoking makes you get worse faster. What's good to know is if you stop smoking, it decreases that risk again. So if you are a smoker and you have multiple sclerosis, quitting smoking is the single most impactful thing you can do. The impact is arguably bigger than a disease-modifying therapy. That's a really big deal. And on this live stream, I want to kick it up a notch. So the first thing is to not smoke cigarettes, but I want to take it a step further because we now know that other cardiovascular risk factors also can accelerate MS's progression. That means that if you have uncontrolled high blood pressure, morbid obesity, if you are uncontrolled with your diabetes, if you have high cholesterol, these are other factors that will literally drive your disease faster. And so if you're trying to be the most awesome version of you despite having MS, and you want to be 4 for 4 in your fight, the first thing is to not smoke cigarettes and to control other cardiovascular risk factors. That's a really big deal. Now, that's number 1. Number 2 is to exercise as part of your lifestyle. The point here is, if you embrace exercise as part of your lifestyle, we know that you'll get worse slower. People with MS that exercise as part of their lifestyle have a slower progression of their disease compared to those that don't. Exercise improves depression. Exercise improves energy levels. Exercise improves cognition. Exercise slows brain shrinkage. And exercise buttresses against an attack. And let me explain what I mean by that. If you clone yourself, so there's 2 of you, and we give clone A chocolate cake and Days of Our Lives TV, and we give clone B an elliptical and carrots, and we get back together 5 years later, I have clone A who is deconditioned, probably overweight, has a weak core, has weak cardiovascular endurance, they're not strong in their legs. I have clone B that is a Greek god or goddess. They've lost weight, they're in shape, they have a strong core, they have strong cardiovascular risk factors. they are really, really doing rather well as far as being prehabilitated. Now, imagine that both clones suffer an attack of left leg weakness. Clone A is deconditioned and sitting in a wheelchair looking up. Clone B is limping. And I ask you, which one do you want to be? So in your fight to be 4 for 4 against MS, number 2 is to exercise as part of your lifestyle. Now, I have many videos on my channel about exercising with MS, because let's be honest, it's not easy to do that. It's not easy to exercise as an adult, but it's particularly challenging if you have multiple sclerosis. And so I think that we have to keep that in mind. A couple points about exercise. It needs to not stink. It needs to not be a punishment. And although the recommendations are to exercise quite frequently, 3 days of cardio a week, 3 days of strength training a week, that may not be the place that you start. And so if you can start simply by walking for 45 minutes or even less than that on a weekend, you're starting moving. Now, I do not count an active lifestyle. I don't count walking at work as part of exercise. I'm talking about setting aside time to exercise. Please check out my videos on the channel if you want to hear some details and some tricks and tips on how to be successful exercising with MS. Number 2, in your fight against MS is to exercise as part of your lifestyle. Number 3, in your fight against MS, when we're trying to be 4 for 4, is to supplement low levels of vitamin D. It looks like low levels of vitamin D at pre-puberty increase an individual's risk to develop MS. And it looks like low levels of vitamin D, if you have MS, correlate with faster progression of disease, more MRI lesions, and more attacks. And so we like to supplement your vitamin D. Now, I don't want you to go to the store and just buy a bunch of vitamin D and take it all. The way that I think that we should do this is you need to have your blood levels checked, then find out where you are. At our center at Ohio Health, we want you to be above 50 but below 100. And we use D3 to help supplement, not D2 because it's not as absorbed as well, but D3. We're typically giving folks about 4,000 to 5,000 international units, and we're checking their vitamin D levels. And sometimes we have to give a lot more. And if you don't know your vitamin D level, I encourage you to ask your provider, hey man, would you check my vitamin D level so that I know the deal? And if you find out that it's low, talk to them about supplementing vitamin D. Now, in this video, I want to kick it up a notch. And so I want to go beyond just supplementing vitamin D. And I want to include a bunch of information, or at least I want to plant seeds in your head about diet in general. I've done a couple of videos on this channel about diet. I did a video where I talked about the benefits of a cardiovascular diet to MS, because as I mentioned, cardiovascular risk factors can drive the disease faster. I recently did a video where I talked about some pro tips to helping lose weight, looking at calories in minus calories out. And I made a recommendation to use an app like MyFitnessPal to help you in tracking that and becoming aware of the calories in and the calories out. I also am recommending using a pedometer or something like that, a wearable, so that you can keep track of how often you're stepping and try to work on increasing that. I'm planning right now a third video on diet, and I'm going to be talking about the benefits of eating real food, whole food. I would be curious, and so please include in the comments section if you think this would be of interest to you, because what I would like to do is a video where I talk about eating real food. There was a time in my life when I realized I really wasn't eating real food. I would drink coffee and I would put Splenda in each cup, like 2 Splenda. And you guys know I drink a lot of coffee. So I was probably drinking, upwards of 16 cups of coffee a day with lots of Splenda in it. Whew. I also was drinking a lot of Diet 7-Up. And I thought it was good to drink Diet 7-Up because there was no sugar in it. But again, a tremendous amount of artificial sweeteners. And I wasn't eating food during the day. I was eating protein bars, these power bars that had a bunch of chemicals in them. And it was pointed out to me, hey man, you're not eating real food, but I didn't really get it. Recently, and I would say in the past 5 years or so, my family has really embraced eating real foods, meaning instead of a protein bar, eating some protein, and in snacking on an apple instead of an apple fritter, and drinking water instead of drinking pop, and drinking coffee without artificial sweetener or sugar in it. And I want to talk to you guys about that. So I plan on doing a video soon where I discuss the benefits of eating real food and staying away from processed foods and staying away from simple sugars. And so you can look forward to that video. I would love to hear your comments. So type comments in here about whether or not you would like to see a video like that or not. I'm hopeful that you're interested, and then I'm going to go forward and make that video. Now, remember, right now we're talking about being 4 for 4 in your fight against MS. And thus far, we've talked about not smoking and controlling cardiovascular risk factors. We've talked about exercise as part of your lifestyle and incorporating that in a way that works for you as an adult and as a person living with MS. We talked about number 3, supplementing low levels of vitamin D, and I'm extending that to talking about eating healthy and eating real foods. The 4th thing is to take a disease-modifying therapy, and I am strongly of the opinion that taking a disease-modifying therapy, the most effective therapy that you're comfortable with as early as possible and staying on it forever or as long as possible, is one of the key things we need to do in order to beat this disease. Once again, guys, I want you to be 4 for 4 in your fight against MS because I want you to be the most awesome version of you possible despite having the disease. And with this introduction, I appreciate you guys jumping online. There are 98 people online. That's really flipping cool. Thank you very much for joining me. It means the world to me. There's been 31 thumbs up. And if you like this live stream, click the thumbs up button. Give me a thumbs up and let me know that you're digging what we're doing right now. Now, there's been some questions, and I'm going to turn to the comments and do my best to read those questions. And we're going to start to do a question and answer session. Eric Brown writes in, "Hi, I know you're a neurologist, but is there any way to fix bladder issues caused by MS?" Eric, that's a great question. Eric's asking about bladder issues, and I'm an MS neurologist. I see people with multiple sclerosis, and as a result, I have to be a junior urologist. Bladder problems are very, very common, Eric. They come in different flavors. Sometimes people have a tight little spastic neurogenic bladder, and they drink half a Coke and they fill it up, and they have to sprint to the bathroom, and they have symptoms of urgency, they have symptoms of frequency, and they have symptoms of nocturia. So what do those words mean? Urgency means when you got to go, man, you got to go right now. And if you don't go right now, you're going to go anyways. And sometimes people, they can't make it to the bathroom in time and they wet themselves. Frequency means you're getting up to go to the bathroom way too often. You're getting up way more than it makes sense for how much you're drinking. And nocturia means you're getting up multiple times a night to go to the bathroom. Now, if you're suffering from a spastic neurogenic bladder, there are a lot of things that can be done. And there's a lot of fantastic medicines like Sanctura and Detrol and Ditropan, and there's a bunch of them out there that help relax the bladder so that it can expand to its full size. But that's not the only thing we do to improve bladder. And so let me throw out a couple tips for you. Number 1, fix constipation. If you're constipated and you're literally full of stool, it pushes on the bladder. It makes bladder urgency much, much worse. And so if you can control constipation, you'll find that your bladder works better. That's actually super helpful for a lot of people. Number 2, most people incorrectly avoid fluids, thinking, hey, if I drink less, I pee less. That's actually not true. You'll pee just as much, and you'll pee a smaller volume, which is actually bad. Because if you don't fill up your bladder and flush your bladder, the urine is super concentrated. You may notice that it's like dark color. And that super concentrated urine is full of uric acid, and it irritates the bladder wall. It makes the bladder spasms, and it makes bladder worse. And so what you want to do is you want to be a good water drinker. Literally, by increasing your water intake, you help expand the bladder, but you help flush the bladder, and you help make the urine less concentrated and more dilute. Also, if you have bacteria in your bladder, you want to flush it out. You want to constantly flush out those bacteria. And so drinking water is very important. Another pro tip, if you have neurogenic bladder and you're worried about not being able to make it in time, is to schedule your voids. So what I mean by this is, if you went to the bathroom at the top of every hour and tried to pee, you would never have an oh no moment because you would constantly be emptying your bladder. Here's the deal. As an adult without MS, you don't schedule bladder trips to the bathroom. You just wait until you feel like you have to pee, and then you meander over to the bathroom when it's convenient for you, and you pee. Sorry, I'm under these lights and it's kind of bright. And when you have MS, the signal from your bladder to your brain doesn't get there. And so you don't know that your bladder is filling full of urine. And by the time you find out, it might be too late. And so then you have literally 5 seconds to get to the bathroom. If you're constantly emptying your bladder, then you're never going to have an oh no moment. Now, there are other kinds of bladder problems. You can have a normal size or a large size bladder, but the bladder neck is closed, it's tight, and you can't get the urine out. And these have different symptoms. People have symptoms of retention, is what I'm talking about. And so you can feel like you need to pee and you sit down to pee and barely any comes out. Or you pee and you think you finished and then you suddenly have to sit back down and pee again. And you may find that you leak and dribble. And when you have bladder retention, there are different techniques that we use. There are medicines that can expand the bladder neck, that can open it up so you can pee more easily. And those can be super, super helpful. Now, sorting out which one you have can be challenging. And one of the best ways to do that is to use a bladder ultrasound. At my center at Ohio Health, we have a bladder ultrasound machine, and we can look at the amount of urine on the surface of the bladder. You know, we put it right on your belly, so it's not invasive, and we can see how much pee-pee is in there. And then we have you urinate into a container, so we can see how much is there. And then we measure it again. And if you have more than 150 cc's, we're concerned you're retaining. If you empty the bladder all the way, we're more concerned not about retention, but about a tight little neurogenic bladder. There's a third problem that you can see with bladder and MS, and that's where you have both problems. It's called dyssynergy. You have a tight little bladder and a tight racquetball, a tight outflow. And so sometimes we need to do dual therapy for that. Urologists are super helpful and they're super good at this. We have a urologist named Ketul Shah, and I adore this guy. He's really, really good. And when we try to improve bladder and we don't get there, we make a referral to see him. And so, Eric, that was an outstanding question. Thank you for asking it. I hope that helps you a bit. There are several videos on my channel about bladder. In fact, I have a playlist called Bowel, Bladder, and Sexual Function. And so if you haven't checked that out, you might look at some of those videos. Let's take another question. So Vicky Hedge writes, hooray, I'm on a whole food plant-based diet. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Well, thank you. I'm really glad to hear that. It's feedback like this that's going to lead to me making this video. So I really appreciate the shout out and give it a thumbs up. Let's see what else we have. Ellie writes in, my diet suffers because I'm just not able to make foods. When my husband's able to make them, yes, we eat real food. Otherwise, we struggle. Ellie, I get that. And sometimes we have to be a bit creative. So let me throw out just a couple ideas. If your husband can cook, say, just on the weekends, is it possible he can make enough food that you could freeze it and then have it in portions throughout the week? Is it possible that he could do something like set up a crock pot where you make a chili, let's say, and then you can divvy that out throughout the week? There's other things that one can do. For example, my family, we like to get those meals that come in a box, like a Blue Apron is an example. That's not the one that we use. But all the foods come to the house, and it's all real food, and then you have to cook it. And the advantage here is you don't have to go to the store and pick out all the individual ingredients. I wonder if by cooking on the weekends or cooking once or twice a week, he can make enough food that you would have it available. Just an idea. I don't know if that would help you guys out. Let me know what you think and throw a comment down below if that might be something useful. Thank you for asking the question. So I've got Pedro who says, hi from Portugal. Hello, Pedro. I've visited Portugal a handful of times. It's an absolutely beautiful country. Thank you for jumping online. He says, I started Lemtrada last month. When will Lemtrada start working? That's a really good question. And a lot of people that take a disease-modifying therapy, whether that be Lemtrada or something else, struggle with this exact question. When's it going to work? And sometimes they expect like a switch, or they expect, ta-da, and they suddenly can really do something that they weren't able to do. And I think it's very important that we level set expectations. Lemtrada is one of the most effective medicines for MS. And as you guys know, we give 5 infusions, one consecutive day. So 5 days of infusions. We wait a year, then we give 3 infusions. And then we don't treat again unless you have new disease activity. What we're looking for is no more attacks, no more new spots on MRI, and we're looking for no change on your neurological exam. And so if we see that, we're not going to redose you. When you say, when do I know if it's working? Primarily because there's an absence of new attacks, There's an absence of future new spots on the MRI. There's an absence of getting worse on, and so really it's the absence of bad things that helps you know that a given disease modifying therapy is working. In this example, Lemtrada. Think about it like a birth control pill. If you take a birth control pill, how do you know if it's working? Well, you're on birth control, you have intercourse, and you don't get pregnant. And so it's the absence of an unplanned event. Now, if you've had the first round of Lemtrada, you're not done being treated. And I like to explain it this way. If you have a urinary tract infection and I give you 3 days of antibiotics, and you take the first day and then you still have burning when you urinate and a foul smell, well, you're not done being treated yet. And to properly use Lemtrada, we have to give 5 days, wait a year, and give 3 days. So if you've had the first round, you're not done yet. And there are some people that have disease activity during that first year. We've studied this, and it doesn't mean it doesn't work, because it does work, but you're not done being treated. The last comment that I'll make is that some people are looking for confirmed improvement. And yes, we have seen some patients, upwards of 41%, that will manifest improvement. But that's 41%, and that doesn't mean that's going to happen to a given individual. We can't take Lemtrada with a firm expectation that we're going to improve. When we do, it's awesome, but that doesn't mean it's always going to happen. And the absence of improvement doesn't mean that it didn't work. So I hope that helps answer your question. Thank you for tuning in from Portugal. It's great to see you, and thank you very much. All right, let's see what else we have going on here. So Inga Franklin writes in, are there MS centers like yours in other states? So yes, there are MS centers throughout the country. I'm actually at a meeting this weekend down in Florida, and there are folks here, MS doctors here, who run MS centers all over the United States, for example. There's amazing MS centers in Oklahoma. There's MS centers in Indiana. There's MS centers in, let me think of some other ones. In other places in Ohio. There's MS centers that are in Nevada. There's a lot of different excellent MS centers. There's MS centers in Texas that are phenomenal. And you have to do some looking. So how do you find an MS center? So one way to find an MS center is to look on the National MS Society website. The National MS Society maintains a website of all of their centers of excellence and partners. And we are certainly a member. We are a center of excellence. And there are many centers of excellence. So I would use the interwebs. I would look at the National MS Society, and I would look at where the MS centers near you are. The CMSC is the Consortium of MS Centers, and my center is a member of the CMSC. And you can get on the CMSC website and you can look for members consortiums of MS centers. And so that's two ways that you can find out. And I am biased, but I'm of the opinion that seeking out an MS center is a really good idea. In part because oftentimes you'll find clinicians that only do MS. In part because many of them are comprehensive. And what that means generally is that they have clinical trial coordinators, they have social workers, they have physical therapists, oftentimes occupational therapists. They have a comprehensive nature about them. That's definitely what we do at my center. For those of you that are not familiar with the Ohio Health MS Center, there's actually a video on my channel where I kind of showcase a little bit of what we did. I had a really cool opportunity a couple years ago at the Consortium of MS Centers, CMSC, where I presented on our MS Center. And you can find that video. It's one of my earlier videos, and it kind of walks you through what the center looks like. So if you wanted to check that out, you certainly could. Looking for other questions. So Vicky writes, MS Geek, I had one recently. Curious, do you take liquid or capsule vitamin D? So there's a lot of different ways of taking vitamin D, and I recommend taking D3. And whether it's liquid, capsule, tablet, I don't think there's any data that suggests one type of D3 is better than another type of D3. So I would look for something that's affordable. Excuse me. I would look for something that's affordable. I'm going to grab some water here, guys. Amanda says hi from Texas. Hello, Amanda. All right, let's look for another question. So I'm still having trouble. Divine showed me how to use the the list here a little bit better of the comments, but I'm still struggling. Sorry. I'm working on it. Divine writes, hi, Val. To quit drinking grog to Dr. Aaron drinks his next cup on live. Cough, cough. He's missing his grog. No, you're right. And so I don't have any grog here, but I have some delicious water. And that should help out a bit. I've got 107 people that have joined in. This is an amazing online community. And you guys know this is MS Awareness Month. And so I'm jumping online to do live streams like this. Today's was really focused on being 4 for 4 in your fight against MS. And now we're taking questions live from around the globe. I think this is super fun. And I want to say thank you all for joining. It means a lot to me. So I've got Heno297 who writes, hey, Dr. B, I've been telling my doctors and nurses and everyone else I meet with MS about your YouTube channel. Everyone is very impressed by it. Well, Heno, that is really awesome of you. Thank you. Thanks for being so helpful, and hello from Ireland. Heno, you're from one of the most beautiful countries in the universe. The greenery in Ireland is breathtaking. And I had a chance to go there with my family a couple years back, and they are amazing memories. Thank you very much for sharing the word and letting people know about my YouTube channel. It's my goal to reach as many people impacted by MS as possible. And so I am grateful for you doing that. For you guys online, this is MS Awareness Month. And if you find my videos helpful, if you think these live streams are helpful, it would be wonderful if you would feel comfortable sharing, letting people know to check out this YouTube channel. That's really, really cool. That's kind of grassroots, and it's really kind of an awesome thing. Thank you very much. All right, so I've got Jody Keogh. Sorry if I'm pronouncing the name wrong. I finally got in to see a neuro doctor, and he said my lesions don't scream MS. The numbness in my fingers, probably from a pinched nerve somewhere. He said, come back in a year for another MRI. Sound okay? Thanks. So Jody Keogh is describing a situation where she has neurological symptoms. She's got numbness in a hand, and her MRI doesn't scream MS. And so I'm going to assume that there might be some spots, but it's not consistent with MS, or it's not adequate to make the MS diagnosis. And so what the neurologist is saying is, come back at a time period and we'll get a second MRI. Now, I can't comment on your specific situation because I don't have enough details, but I will make some general comments. Generally speaking, that's not a terrible idea. I do agree that repeating a scan at an interval is a good idea. But I think we need to be looking at the brain and the spinal cord, because you can have hand numbness because of a brain problem. You can have hand numbness because of a spinal cord problem. And so if you haven't had both a brain and a cervical spine, I think that's important. Also, if he thinks you have a pinched nerve, you can do tests to look for a pinched nerve. So there's a neurological exam called an EMG, electromyography, EMG nerve conduction study, which can look at the nerves in the arm, and it'll tell you if you have a pinched nerve. And so there may be some other things that you want to do to explore to try to help figure that out. Now, whether you come back in a year or whether you come back in 6 months is a discussion. There are situations where I recommend someone come back in a year for a scan. There are other situations where I ask them to come back in 6 months. And so that's just some food for thought. But I guess speaking in generalities, I agree with the idea. If we don't have a diagnosis, we might want to wait a year, or might want to wait a period of time and then repeat scans. The last thing I'll say is that if you develop worsening symptoms, or if you develop new symptoms, you want to come back to the neurologist a bit sooner. I'm going to try to adjust the camera height because I'm kind of straining my neck. All right, guys, let's see if that's a little bit better. Moving on to another question. I really do appreciate that one. So Tracy writes in. This is Tracy Bradshaw. And Tracy says, hi, Dr. B. I have shared your channel with my neurologist, and he stated he is going to share it with the rest of the group. Well, that's really cool. Thank you again. Guys, that means the world to me. It is so special to me that I can reach folks with MS in between visits. You guys know that I started this channel so I could help my own MS clinic patients learn between their visits. And it means the world to me that I can help other folks with MS. And so thank you for sharing that. So Michael Levin writes in, hello from Coshocton, Ohio. Why do insurance companies drag their feet when approving DMTs? If you are a specialist, why do you have to suffer while they drag their feet? So Michael, I share your frustration at the hoops that were made to jump through to get on disease-modifying therapies. It is a really big frustration for me. It's a really big frustration for my staff. It's a really big frustration for my patients. So I empathize with you, brother. It is really, really challenging. I do want to point out that MS medicines are super expensive. And so if you're being prescribed an MS medicine, they're typically going to cost the insurance company between $80,000 and $130,000 a year. And so you can imagine from their perspective, they're not real quick to say, yeah, take it. And they make us go through a couple hoops. They also do other things that can sometimes delay it. And all I can say to you is you want to push back. You want to make sure that you and your neurologist are being aggressive in filling out the forms and in following up with the teams. And if you have a denial, then we're gonna the neurologist and the neurology team is gonna fight back by writing letters of appeal and by doing peer-to-peers. I probably do, up to 4 or 5 peer-to-peer conversations a week where I'm talking to medical directors explaining why we need to do this. I think that persistence is important. And I'll share a pro tip. You as a patient can appeal and you can say, I'm not okay with this. You can literally call your insurance company and you can talk with them. And so the key here is to be persistent, to make sure that you're doing your part. If there's a form that you need to fill out, make sure you fill it out, to work in unison with your neurologist and to keep pushing. We at Ohio Health have literally 3 people. All they do is help prior auth disease-modifying therapies. Now think about that for a second. There are 3 human beings that we pay full-time. They're amazing women, and they're really good at their jobs, and their sole purpose is to help push these medicines through. And so that's one of the ways that we try to tackle this problem. It is a source of frustration. It is not okay. I'll leave one more idea. If this bothers you, you can call your state representative and you can call your senator, and you can literally say, hey guys, I'm a person with MS. I live in your district. You represent me, and I am really not okay with the way that an insurance company is delaying my care. And I want you as my representative to know that. I want you as my senator to know that. And if enough people with chronic diseases like MS called, it would impact change. And so just a couple ideas to try to improve things. Thanks for asking the question, and hello in Coshocton, Ohio. All right, so Pedro writes in, how do you treat neuropathic pain? So Pedro, interestingly, when I was in medical school, they taught me that MS didn't cause pain, which is really, really wrong. My professors were incorrect. MS can absolutely cause pain. And I have a video called Multiple Sclerosis Hurts, because it can. There are many, many different ways that MS can hurt. And there are things like optic neuritis, which is painful, Lermite's phenomenon, which is painful, spasticity, which is painful, and neuropathic pain in the limbs or in the body or in the face. There's increased risk of trigeminal neuralgia. There's a lot of different ways that people with MS can hurt. I have several videos on managing neuropathic pain. And if you haven't checked those out, I certainly would. We have pretty good success using neuropathic pain medicines, not narcotics. Narcotics are not the right choice. They do not work very well to treat neuropathic pain. But medicines like anti-seizure medicines and antidepressants have been shown to help pain. I'm not talking about taking the anti-seizure medicine because of a seizure, but the properties of the medicine oftentimes can help with the type of pain that's caused by nerve, spinal cord, and brain damage. Similarly, certain antidepressants, particularly like the tricyclic antidepressants like Elavil and Pamelor, and some of the newer SNRIs like Cymbalta can be very, very helpful. And so I have a lot of success using those medicines. Please check out the videos I've done on treating neuropathic pain. I hope that you find them helpful. All right. Let's look for another question. So Kate McGinley writes in, hi, Dr. B. Well, hello, Kate. How are you? She writes, I'm thinking about using a cane. I'm okay walking, but I fall over whenever I stand still. Is this normal? I'm worried I'm not disabled enough to use a cane and people may judge. Kate, let me start by saying thank you for writing that question. Thank you for being brave and for bringing this question to light. Second of all, let me share with you that I think that you're being really smart. You're being really smart because you don't want to fall. Falling is really bad for you, and you can bang your head. If you have thin bones, you can shatter a hip or break a leg. There's a lot of really bad things that can happen when you fall. And so I want to commend you for thinking, man, I don't want to do that, and I need to do some things to help prevent it. People use canes for all kinds of different reasons. And using a cane to help keep you up so that you have better balance is a brilliant idea. I really, really think that's an awesome idea. Canes are relatively inexpensive. And if you find that using a cane helps you, I think that you're a super smart woman for doing that. And I would totally encourage you to do that. There's some other things that you want to be thinking about. And you might find that working with a physical therapist to be very, very helpful. Physical therapists can give you exercises and they can help retrain the body. They can also help prevent falls. And so I think that getting a cane is a good idea. I think that seeing physical therapy is also a really good idea. Now, let me make a comment about what you said, that you're concerned that you're not disabled enough to need a cane and that people will judge you. Because that's a very real concern that many, many people I take care of have. A lot of MS is invisible. Many, many of the symptoms of MS are invisible. And so the casual observer would say, oh, honey, you look so good. And they don't realize that you have really poor balance, or that you can't feel your leg, or that if you walk for half a mile, your legs become so weak you can't keep going. And that doesn't mean that that's not going on. It's just that they can't see it just to casually look at you. And I want to challenge you a little bit. How on earth, how could we possibly change the culture if you don't use a cane? Think about this. If there's a little boy walking with his mom and he never sees somebody using a cane, he's never going to learn that that's a really smart option for people that don't want to fall. If you are brave enough to use a cane, then he's going to see a fantastic, wonderful person using a cane. And that may prompt a conversation between him and his mom. Hey, mommy, what's that woman doing? That woman's using a cane. And it normalizes, not stigmatizes, using a cane. And that's what we want to do. We want to normalize, not stigmatize. I think that you should use a cane if it's going to make you walk safer. And I think that culturally, you're doing something very, very important by using a cane in public. Some of you have probably, I think, Selma something, and she is an actress. I think she was in Legally Blonde, or at least I read that. And she has recently been diagnosed with MS. She recently did something that warmed my heart. She went to the red carpet and she walked in a beautiful gown using a cane. Why am I so impressed by that? Well, number one, she's smart. She doesn't want to fall while walking in the red carpet in the same way that you don't want to fall walking in the mall. Second of all, she normalized, not stigmatized, using a cane. And if more people would do that, I think we would help educate the populace at large that you're not using a cane for a weird reason. You're using a cane because you're really smart. So thank you for asking that question. I think that you're really brave. I also think that you're really intelligent for thinking through this. And I would vote yes on using a cane. Thank you for asking. There's 106 people online. We have 72 thumbs up. That's really awesome. If you're digging this live stream, please give it a thumbs up and let me know. And let's ask some other questions. Divine writes, you so much remind me of myself. So this is when I refused to use a walker. I believe in your decision, and you're strong because of it. I recommend it. So Divine, you're making absolute sense. And, you know, a walker provides a lot more stability than a cane. In a cane, it can prevent you from falling in one direction, but you can fall the other direction. A walker provides a lot more stability. And there's another perk of a walker. If your walker has a seat, then you can put a laundry basket on it when you're traveling in the house. If the walker has a seat and you're going somewhere far and you're starting to get weak, you can sit down. And so I think that a walker has a lot of advantages when someone needs a bit more stability or bilateral stability. I have some patients that don't want to use a walker. And so instead they find using bilateral canes or bilateral crutches can be helpful. Thank you, Divine, for supporting Kate in her decision. And thank you for chiming in. I really appreciate you. You were super helpful yesterday on teaching me how to use the comments, and you made a great comment today, and thank you for that. Let's take another one. So I've got a question here from Israel. Is stem cell treatment comparable with the Ocrevus I'm being treated with now? I just found out that it's available here in Israel. If you pay enough, saw the treatment protocol, looks awful. So the question is stem cell transplantation versus a highly effective medicine. Now, I've talked about this recently on my channel a few times. I discussed it on a live stream yesterday, and I'll talk a little bit about it now. Stem cell transplantation is not prime time. Stem cell transplantation, in my opinion, should not be done outside of research. Stem cell transplantation sounds sexy, but to your point, it's really, really hard, and there's still a mortality associated with it. I think that stem cell transplants will probably become part of the MS armamentarium within the next 5 to 10 years, but it's not prime time yet. I think that, in my opinion, the risk-benefit of a highly effective medicine, whether that be Ocrevus, alemtuzumab, natalizumab, is better than considering a stem cell transplant. And so that's my professional opinion. That's something that I really believe very firmly about. And I personally would not recommend a stem cell transplant. I also want to very strongly caution people against stem cell transplant tourism. There's a lot of evil out there, and there are some quacks out there. And right now, you can travel to exotic places like India or Mexico or Chicago. And if you pay them a lot of money, they'll swap out your bone marrow, or at least they say they will. And that needs to be avoided. I do not want you to consider a stem cell transplant outside of a research trial. Thank you for asking the question. All right. So I've got Marie Rossler that writes, I drive a lot with work, but I find that I am starting to make small errors. Could this be cog fog setting in? Marie, thank you for asking that question. And I want to thank you specifically for having the wherewithal to want to be safe. I don't want you to be in a car and to get in a car accident and hurt yourself or hurt a family in the car next to you. And so I appreciate you thinking about this. If you're concerned about driving, I recommend talking to your MS provider, and I recommend asking for an occupational therapy driving evaluation. Occupational therapists will literally put you in a car with them. They can use a virtual car, or they can use a parked car, and sometimes they'll take you in a real car in a parking lot or on a course, and they can help you figure out where the problems are. It could be cog fog. It could be vision. It could be reaction time. It could be coordination. It could be the pedals. There's a bunch of things that could be wrong. And an occupational therapist can help you sort that out. They can also help retrain you. And so that they can use adaptive adjustments to the car or retrain you, kind of like a physical therapist would retrain you to make you safe behind the wheel. If you don't feel safe behind the wheel, please don't put yourself in danger and don't put other people in danger. And ask your MS provider to meet with an occupational therapist for a driving evaluation. It is a really, really smart idea. Excellent question, and thank you for asking it. What's next? So Huda, I hope I'm saying that right. Huda writes, question, Dr. B, how do you deal with weak legs, not disabled, but feeling heavy and tired? Big thanks from Saudi Arabia. Wow, that's really cool. Hello in Saudi Arabia. So when people talk about heavy legs, it can mean a lot of different things. I'm going to try to break it down a little bit. Sometimes people are weak. And when I say a leg is weak, it's not a overall, I'm tired and weak. It's a leg that's not strong under voluntary control. So when you want to make it move, you really struggle to make it move. And you may drag your leg, you may drag your foot. And you may find that as you make efforts, it doesn't improve the strength. That's weakness. There's another term that I use, numbness. or a change in sensation. And if your leg is really, really numb, it might not be weak, but it might feel heavy. And you might have trouble moving it in part because you don't know where the leg is in space. You can also have other problems like coordination and whatnot. So what do you do about heavy legs? You want to look into what's causing it. Oh, another thing, particularly in Saudi Arabia, is motor fatigue. So heat sensitivity. I have many patients, they wake up, they're refreshed, it's cool temperature in their house, and they're doing okay. But as soon as they start to exercise by walking a certain distance, or as soon as their body heats up because it's hot outside, they develop motor fatigue, meaning that their leg becomes weak, and then they have to rest again. If we can sort out which problem is causing the leg heaviness, we can sometimes rehabilitate. Physical therapy is really, really, really important. And I absolutely would encourage you to work very carefully with a physical therapist because they can help you figure out which of these problems you're having, and they can come up with a treatment regimen to help make it better. It's hard to strengthen weak legs, but it can be done. And you can retrain gait. You can retrain how you walk. There are some medicines that are available to help with heat sensitivity. There's a medicine called Ampera, pyridine. I have videos on my channel where I explain how it works. And in about half of patients with MS, it really improves heat sensitivity. So that was an excellent question. Thank you for asking it. And hello all the way in Saudi Arabia. So Kate writes in, thank you, everyone. Selma made me think about it. I really don't want to fall in front of everyone. She still uses heels. I'm here with her. Well, that's awesome, Kate. We are proud of you. You are not by yourself. You are surrounded by an awesome online global community. We're here for you, and we support you in your desire to not fall. We support you in your desire to use a cane to be safe. And if Selma can do it, you absolutely can do it too. So Pam Calvert writes in, please talk about Copaxone. How do I know if it's working for me? So Pam, let's talk about Copaxone. So Copaxone is one of the MS disease-modifying therapies. It's an injection taken under the skin, typically given 3 times a week. Now, the older versions of Copaxone were daily. And after this trial called the GALA trial that my mentor, Omar Khan, ran, we proved that we could take it 40 milligrams 3 times a week. Copaxone came out in the late 90s, and it is a first-line therapy. It's mildly effective. It's not a real oomphy medicine. It decreases relapses as compared to placebo by about 30%, and it decreases disability by about 30%. It's not an awesome medicine. It's an okay medicine. Now, how do you know if it's working? If you're not having MS attacks, that's good. And if you're not having new spots on your MRI, and if you're not having new accumulation of disability on exam, those are suggestions that it might be working. I think we have to look beyond that, though. We have to look at the litmus test of life. And if you're pulling away from activities, if you're so fatigued or so depressed, or if other things are going on in MS that are destroying the quality of your life, I don't think a disease-modifying therapy is working. Now, Pam, I have a video on my channel that I made last year where I asked if there's still a role for Copaxone in 2018. So if you haven't seen that video, I would encourage you to check it out. And you can hear more of my opinions on Copaxone. So I'm not going to be able to pronounce this name very well, but I'm going to try. Giannis, and the last name, Auchi. I know I didn't pronounce that right, and I apologize, Giannis. But Giannis writes, hello, doctor. Can I hope that a drug like Copaxone or Ocrevus can be more effective for me than Lemtrada? So I think that Ocrevus and Lemtrada are high efficacy drugs. I think Copaxone is a lower efficacy drug. So I would not put Copaxone in the same bucket or category as Ocrevus or Lemtrada. Okay, I've got someone whose username is a Total Chaos Homestead. That's kind of a cool username. Howdy. And they write, sometimes I feel my eyes moving really fast, and it causes an onset like I'm going to pass out dizziness. My neuro sent me to an eye doctor, and then eye doctor sent me back to the neuro. Is this common in MS? Well, a Total Chaos Homestead, it really depends on what's going on. There's a lot of things that can go haywire with eye movements in MS. And If you're still struggling, I recommend a special type of ophthalmologist. There's a special type of eye doctor called a neuro-ophthalmologist. A neuro-ophthalmologist is an expert at the brain-eye connection and all the brain circuitry that makes the eyes move. And if the neurologist or the general eye doctor is struggling, I would recommend that you see a neuro-ophthalmologist. All right, next question. I've got Candy Duncan online. Candy, hello, how are you doing? Candy writes, are you still going to do any after parties after these chats like you've done in the past? Thank you. So Candy is commenting that recently when I do a live stream video and I don't get to all of the questions, I'll then do an after party where I'll go through the questions that I didn't get to and I'll try to answer them. And Candy, interestingly, when I've made those videos, they haven't been very well received. I don't get a lot of views. And it takes me quite some time to make a video. I don't know if you guys know this, but when you see a 15-minute video, it takes me a couple hours to make that video. It takes me maybe a half an hour to record it, and then I spend hours editing it. And so it takes me a particularly long time to do that. If there's a strong interest for that, I can continue to do that, but it's a lot of work. And I've noticed that I don't have a lot of views when I do a live stream after party. So if you guys think a live stream after party is awesome, give me comments and let me know that you're interested in that. And I can certainly reconsider. Thanks for asking the question. There's 110 people online right now. This is really awesome. I've got 89 thumbs up. If you're liking this live stream, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Keeping in mind that it is MS Awareness Month, it's my goal to jump online and do live streams very frequently this month. And the goal here really is to energize you guys. It's to help educate. It's to help to empower people impacted by MS. And so thank you for joining me online in this awesome global online community where we can band together. We have MS and we can raise the bar and we can make you the most awesome version of you despite having multiple sclerosis. So I'm almost out of time here. It's 52 minutes into the hour. Let's take a couple other questions. Bruce Owen writes, OxyContin is no good. You're right. OxyContin is no good. I think there is no role, zero, for using narcotics to treat neuropathic pain in MS. I do not use narcotics in my practice. I do not recommend using narcotics. I know that there are people that are going to get upset by that. I have a video where I talk about why I don't think you should use narcotics. And so if you haven't seen that video, I would check it out. Thank you for saying that. I totally agree with you. All right, let's look at another question. So David Downey writes, hello from Philadelphia. I'm not able to have an MRI because I have an ICD. Can a CT help me diagnose MS? So David shares that he has a device to help his heart, and because of it, he can't have an MRI. And he's asking, would a CT scan help? And probably not very much. CT technology is limited, and it doesn't really show the brain very well. It might show something, but so I guess if you got a CT scan and it had clear lesions, that's helpful. But if it's normal, it doesn't really tell you very much, and so that's a difficult situation. But don't lose hope, David, because we had the ability to diagnose MS before we had MRIs, and a good neuroimmunologist, a good MS specialist should be able to help guide you through that process. It's probably going to be necessary to do very careful neuro exams, and it's probably going to be necessary to get spinal fluid. It's probably going to be helpful to get an OCT, which is an eye test that won't interfere with your device, and some other tests like visual evoked potentials, somatosensory evoked potentials. These are electrical tests. We can still get to the diagnosis, but I do agree that it's much, much more challenging. All right, guys. The last few questions, and then we're going to sum things up. There's 104 likes. That is freaking awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is so cool. I really, really appreciate it, guys. El Holly writes, instead of an after party, perhaps you could answer additional questions right on the comments section after the live stream is over at your convenience. That's not a bad idea. I could probably figure out a way to look at those questions and then do another live stream where I just answer them. Maybe that might be a good idea. El Holly, what do you think of that? if I kept a track of those questions and then I jumped online and I just answered them, would that be something of interest? It would definitely be a lot faster on my end because I would be doing it live as opposed to be preparing it the way that I do in the after party. So let me know what you guys think about that. All right. So Darlene writes, any connection with Chiari malformation and MS? So Chiari malformation is a way that you're born where the base of the brain kind of hangs sort of low in the base of the skull. So at the base of your skull is a hole and the brain sits in it and it can hang down too far. And there is no association between Chiari malformation and MS. If you have MS and you have a Chiari malformation, sometimes nature is too generous and you end up with two conditions. But there's no known association. The answer is no. All right. So let's see here. Last question. Tin Man writes, so with no painkillers and only herbal refreshments and naloxone and BP meds, I'm a little clueless about how to help my pain. So Tim Man, there are a lot of medicines that can help with pain and MS. I'm simply saying I don't recommend using narcotics. I have videos about this on my channel, but there are medicines that can be used to treat neuropathic pain. There's a bunch of medicines that were originally invented to treat seizures. Medicines like Topamax, medicines like Neurontin, medicines like Lyrica can be very, very helpful to treat MS pain. There's also a lot of medicines that were invented to treat depression, but they have anti-pain properties like Cymbalta and tricyclic antidepressants like Pamelor and Elavil. So there are a lot of medicines that we can use to help treat pain. I'm just recommending not using narcotics. Okay, let's maybe do one more question. And here's Adam W. from Alaska. Adam, I had the opportunity to take a cruise up to Alaska recently, and it was amazing. I realized when I looked at a map that I barely got into Alaska at all. And I would absolutely love to be able to visit your state again. It's something that is on my bucket list, and thank you for writing in from Alaska. So let's look at your question. Hi from Alaska. I constantly run into an issue going from cold to warm, getting spastic in the cold and fatigued when I reheat. Any suggestions? Well, Adam, that is a very, very real concern. And certainly in the winter months where I live in Ohio, people suffer from that. You go outside and it is freaking cold out. And then you go inside and you get overheated. And it is challenging. And so you can do the best job possible of layering your clothes. And as soon as you get inside, stripping off the layers so you don't get overheated. And when you go outside, bundling up and staying warm. That being said, it is not an easy thing. Many people benefit from taking Ampera or 4-aminopyridine, which can help with heat sensitivity. And that may help you when you enter back into the house. Many people benefit from medicines like baclofen when they get spastic. And so you may find that during these winter months, going in and out, that being on those kind of medicines can help you. Behaviorally, and I'm sure that you already do this, you want to minimize the number of trips back and forth. And you want to layer so you can quickly strip them off and then put them back on. I wish you the best of luck up in Alaska. It is certainly cold out. All right, guys, this will be the last question, and then I'm going to wrap things up. All right, Linda writes, I was wanting to comment on having to use a cane. I just decided that they will be as cute as possible. Linda, you're right. I love when people with MS that come to clinic trick out their canes. I have seen some really cool freaking canes. I've seen beautiful carved canes. I've seen canes that have flames down the side. I've seen canes that have all kinds of decals. And I love it when you take ownership of an assist device like that. I have a patient that has put a baby shoe on the end of her cane, and it actually gives the cane more stability, and it's freaking cool. So I agree with you. If you're going to rock a cane, rock that cane and make it awesome. All right. So I'm going to wrap up now, guys. I had a great time with you this past hour. It is so meaningful to me that there's 111 people that are online right now with me and 111 thumbs up. This is MS Awareness Month, and I'm going to be trying to get online as much as possible and doing live streams like this. It's my goal to raise the level of awareness about MS. It's my goal to empower you. It's my goal to educate. It's my goal to raise the level of awareness, and you're helping me do that. This is a global online community. The theme today was being 4 for 4 in your fight against MS. And if you joined the live stream late, definitely check out the replay where you can go back and you can hear about being 4 for 4 in your fight against MS. My name's Aaron Boster, and as always, thank you for learning about MS with me. And until my next live stream or my next video, take care.